Okay, so for this game I played my Ogre cons versus an army of Dread Elves this time, and I have not played against Dread Elves in quite some time. I gotta say I'm used to playing against Dwarfs, so Strength 3, Toughness 3 is going to be interesting. His list has got a lot of shooting and magic, so I'm really excited to play against this different type of list than what I'm used to. Okay, so let's talk about the Dread Elf list for a little bit. He's got a Dread Prince fighting character, and he only has a 6+ ward, which is interesting because he still has 50 points left over in magical item allowance. So he could have maybe included a 5+ ward. Maybe he ran out of points. A Dread Captain, he's just there for the reroll. And I'm wondering maybe if he drops the Mithril Mail and improves the ward save on the fighting character, the Dread Prince, maybe that would have been better. He's got the Oracle, trying out the Cosmology path, and he's doubling up on the 2 spells that the Dark Acolytes have, because they're also running Wizard Conclave with Cosmology. So he's got the Altered Sight that he can cast twice for a +2 weapon skill that could make a difference in a combat, and the ranged magic spell. 11 crossbowmen, so the Oracle can sit in there and be protected. Okay. If you notice, his core he's slightly over by 85 points, so some improvements there could be made. Dark Acolytes, big unit of them. They're fast. They got ward saves. Like I said, he's doubling up on the Ice and Fire spell, so a lot of ranged potential. The Dread Knights, they're tough. They have stupidity, so he's giving them the gleaming icon in case they get too far from the leadership bubble. And big unit of Tower Guard, a stubborn Death Star unit with the 2 characters in there, with the reroll 1s and 2s banner. So that's the unit that I want to just avoid with any of my units. So this list, he's got 5 scoring units, one of which is heavy cavalry. He's got heavy potential for range damage with a lot of shooting and a lot of magic. Alright, so let's go over my list. Okay, so for my list I'm going for an MSU Ogre Hellfist list. I'll take advantage of the Ogre's high movement, lots of chaff, 1 really big heavy hitter unit, and some shooting. So for my characters, I got 1 Shaman, that's it. The 4+ ward to protect against miscasts from Thaumaturgy, which are more likely and more devastating. And in this version of the game, you can take ward saves against miscast. He's going to be sitting in the 2nd rank of Tribesman unit to avoid getting hit, because they can go 3 wide. He should be swinging with a great weapon to provide combat res, but I ran out of points, so he's only got the Iron Fist. He's the character that does everything. He's got the magic with 4 spells, he's providing leadership rerolls to the whole table, and he's got Inspiring Presence with leadership 8, so he's improving the leadership of the tribesmen that he's sitting in. Okay, next we got the 8 Bruisers. They have higher leadership than the tribesmen, so they should be able to go on their own a little bit further away than from the character. They got the Skull of Quenget banner to provide fear. So if ever the enemy fails the fear check, that'll help them hit, which is important because when they hit, it really hurts. They have strength 6. So now we got the 7 tribesmen, the wizard bunker, nothing special. They got Iron Fist, they can parry, so they can last a bit longer, getting hit on 3+ by elves. I got 2 Kid Eaters to hunt war machines. I got 7 mercs, a glass cannon unit that should be taken out with shooting. They're very, very destructive. They have Swift Stride and +1 strength on the charge with the reroll 1s, armor saves to hit and to wound. and a high number of attacks for going up against even the toughest units. 3 saber-toothed tigers for chaff, and the 2 units of 2 yetis now. These guys are really interesting. So they just go along the flanks and dodge arcs with their light troops ability, and they should be able to take out any small elf unit with their -1 initiative debuff and paired weapons. So they swing at the same time as elves. And they have the fear ability, so they're useful on the flanks where the enemy units are far away from the leadership bubble. So in case they fail their check, Yetis are just going to rip them apart. I got 2 units of 4 bombardiers for shooting, which is lovely against elves of toughness 3. And they're in units of 4 and not in a big unit of 8 that I had before, because in a unit of 4 you can put them in a 2x2 unit for increased maneuverability, and you double up your scoring units. So I've got 5 scoring units, and they're all medium size, and they're fast. They're all movement 6. I didn't take any scraplings in this list because it's the Hellfist list, so the scraplings don't benefit from leadership rerolls. My opponent, he's got the 5 scoring units, and one of which is heavy cav, so it should be an interesting matchup, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we roll for spells, and the number 4 spell, the only one that I didn't want to get, I rolled 3 4s. So I was forced to pick the Speaking in Tongues spell, which denies Inspiring Presence, and elves already have a really high leadership, so that spell's really useless to me. So I'm stuck with that for the rest of the game. And I roll Trial of Faith and Wrath of the God, and for my chosen spell I choose Hand of Heaven. My opponent gets Altered Sight, Truth of Time, Ice and Fire, and Unity and Divergence. Now note that he has Ice and Fire and Altered Sight twice, once on his Oracle and once on the Wizard Conclave inside the Dark Acolytes. Okay, so we are playing Frontline Clash with the Breakthrough secondary objective. Now, my opponent chose his deployment zone, and so I got to choose who deploys first, and I let him deploy first. Now, he saw that my list had a lot of small units with 3 dogs, so he saw I was going to out-deploy him, so he decided to just drop his whole army, and I had the opportunity to counter-deploy him. Okay, so from left to right, he's got his Dark Raiders, his Raven Cloaks, and his Corsairs, and then he's got his Repeater Auxiliaries, his unit of Dread Knights, his Tower Guard, and he's got his Dark Acolytes and the Dread Legionnaires right behind, and he's got the 2 Bolt Throwers over there on the right. I decide to put the Bombardiers in front of the Dark Raiders and the Yetis for support against that small unit of Raven Cloaks. The Bombardiers, I put him up on a hill, which was a mistake because he ended up shooting at them on his first turn, so what I really should have done was hide them behind the hill, and then on my first turn move them up onto the hill and shoot without taking a penalty, because Bombardiers don't take penalties for moving and shooting. Okay, next I put my Bruiser unit in front of his Dread Knights, because the Dread Knights have high armor saves and the Bruisers have great weapons with a strength 6. The Tribesmen with the Wizard are hiding behind the fence to try to defend them as much as possible. I don't want these guys going into close combat, so I'm not sure if putting them in front of the Tower Guard Death Star was a good idea, but nevertheless, they have cover and they have distracting while they're behind the fence. Mercs are sitting in the woods to provide cover against that ballista and the twin ballistas, and they should be able to completely destroy that Legionnaire unit and maybe even the Acolytes. I've got the Saber-Toothed Tiger, one beside each of my blocks, one behind the fence for cover, one inside the woods for cover, and the other one beside my the 2 of them behind the fence right there. Now I've got another Yeti unit over there on the right that you can't see in this picture. That one's going to be used to just go straight ahead and vanguard and attack the War Machine to take it out. Okay, I'm going to show a close-up of the different units that were in this battle. Okay, the Corsairs, the Dread Knights, big unit Tower Guard, the Acolytes, the Ballista, the Mercs and Wolf, 2 Wolves and Tribesmen, Bruisers, Bombardiers up on the hill, Yetis and more Bombardiers, Ravencloaks, Bombardiers, Yeti goes up, Mercs, you see the Yetis on the right. Okay, turn 1 Dread Elves. He's not aggressive at all, he just sort of sits back and takes advantage of his shooting and magic. He goes ahead and casts the Ice and Fire spell, killing that wolf that was sitting in the woods, because woods don't provide cover against magic. Okay, shooting and magic, he unleashes a volley of shots into the Bombardiers, and his second magic spell as well. Ravencloaks shoot into the Yetis, doing a wound. Okay, with the Yetis, they had already vanguarded, so I decided to charge the Ravencloaks, and the Ravencloaks stand and shoot and kill an entire Yeti, because he only had 2 wounds left. Now, the Yetis will be taking DTs for going through the ruins, but that's okay. Okay, the Yeti makes it in, and this is what it looks like. 2 Ravencloaks touching the Yeti. Okay, one of the wolf pops out with a move of 18 inches and chaffs up the Tower Guard to stop them from charging the Bruisers, because that will be combat not in my favor. Bruisers move up just slightly in order to threaten the Dread Knights. Okay, I go ahead and chaff up the Dark Acolytes with the wolf. Unfortunately, I forgot that the Dark Acolytes have the Light Troops rule, and they can just move around them very easily and get out of the arc of my mercenary veterans. Okay, the Yetis move up and turn that way in order to threaten the Ballista on the next turn. For magic, I get 7 dice to 5, and I nobody channels. Okay, I go ahead and cast the Wrath of the God. He dispels it. Then I cast Hand of Heaven into the Dread Knights, thinking I would maybe get high strength attack into the small unit of Knights. But unfortunately, I don't roll very well for the strength roll, and it's only a strength 2 hit, so it doesn't do anything. Here's a good picture of my wolf blocking the Tower Guard, with the penny there, or the 5 cents marking where I wanted to cast Wrath of God, but unfortunately, I think he dispelled it. Okay, my Bombardiers open up into the unit of Dark Raiders on the left, and kill 4 of them, and honestly, I'm not surprised. Bombardiers are excellent against a small unit of fast cavalry like that. They just completely just remove them off the board, and they've been really reliable in my past games when it comes to doing that, so they always consistently do their job. Okay, so as you can tell from this picture, the Yeti gets in with swift stride, takes no wounds from the dangerous terrain, and manages to completely destroy the Ravencloaks because they failed their fear check. With the -1 leadership and far away from the leadership bubble, they fail it, and then the Yeti is just, well, the single Yeti actually, wins combat and then chases them down, panicking the last Dark Raider off the board. Okay, my opponent's turn 2, magic and shooting. He removes a Bruiser and a Mercenary Veteran. Okay, the Dark Acolytes decide to completely dodge the arc of the Mercenary Veterans, so they can't be charged in the next turn. And the Dread Legionnaires will take care of that dog that was supposedly chaffing them. Same with the Tower Guard, they charge the dog, and they decide to not overrun, because that would expose their flank to the Bruisers. So they just go ahead and perform a pivot, a post-combat pivot. Okay, so my turn 2, I forgot to mention the Corsair unit moves up and angles like so. I charge with the Bruiser unit into the Corsairs and with the Bombardiers who make it in. I maximize like that. The Corsairs stand and shoot with their repeater handbows, taking off another Bruiser. Okay, the Yeti unit on the right charges with swift stride into the bolt thrower and makes it in. The mercenary veterans charge the Dread Legionnaires that had just killed the wolf. I go ahead and roll my ambush rolls for my 2 King Eaters, and I get a 1 and a 2. How disappointing. So they won't show up till later in the game, unfortunately. Okay, magic. I got 8 dice to 5. Okay, I throw 4 dice with Thaumaturgy into Wrath of the God, rerolling a 1, and I get 14. My opponent decides to use his Dispel Scroll to get rid of it, and then use the rest of his Dispel dice to dispel my other spell, so I got no spells off that phase. Okay, so the combination of the impact hits from the Ogres and the fact that the Corsair unit failed their fear check because they were too far away from the general allowed the Ogre units to completely destroy the Corsairs, taking very few losses. The mercenary veterans completely destroy the Dread Legionnaires in combat just by killing them, and they decide to overrun, and now they're outside of the arc of the Tower Guard and facing that bolt thrower. The Yetis destroy the War Machine and overrun as well. So that was a really good turn for me. I took off 3 units. Okay, so my opponent's turn 3. So this is a crucial point in the game because we have the situation where the Bruisers are in the center of the table and the Tower Guard has no chaff in front of them to block them anymore. So he's going to go ahead and declare charge on the Bruisers. So I thought about this for a while and I decided I have to flee because the Tower Guard, with all their special rules and their banner that rerolls 1s and 2s, the characters, I'm going to lose my Bruiser unit. If I hold, I'm going to lose the unit. So I decide I'm going to flee directly away from them. And because I fled to the left, if the Tower Guard unit had not redirected and just pursued me, then they would have chaffed up the Dread Knight unit. So my opponent decided to redirect them into my General's unit, which was pretty far away. He actually needed a 10 on the dice. They were behind the fence. And he goes ahead and he rolls it. He makes it in, so it goes 2 feet across the table or something, and makes it into my Tribesman unit. And so this is what it looks like after he's completed his movement. You can see the Tower Guard there into the Tribesmen that are defended by the wall. The Dark Acolytes on the right. Dread Knights turn to face the Mercenary Veterans in the flank. The Bruisers had run away, escaped, and the Bombardiers over there just kind of out of the way and moving along the side there. And it actually kind of worked out well for me because if the Auxiliaries unit charges into the back of my Bruisers, my Bombardiers are there to stop that charge. So it's not a bad situation, to be honest. I'll just rally on my turn and go ahead and charge the Auxiliaries. My single Yeti over there on the left turns around and faces the crossbowman unit ready to charge on my 3rd turn. Okay, big magic phase for my opponent, double 6. He's gonna go ahead and blast me with magic. Takes out my Yeti there that was about to charge the Auxiliaries in my next turn. He also tries to cast the Truth of Time, the weapon skill bonus to his Tower Guard that are fighting my Tribesmen, but I just make sure I dispel that. I threw all my dice at it because I do not want them hitting any better than they already are. They will be hitting on 4s because of the parry and the distracting from the fence and lightning reflexes, so I did not want them hitting on any better than that. Okay, shooting. He shoots another Bombardier and puts the wound on the other one. Okay, so my opponent doesn't roll exceptionally well, but this is what I rolled to hit. So I had the dice in my favor, but I still lost by 1 or 2 points. I'm not sure. And he decides to pursue, and he runs me down. Yeah. So even with the Hellfist, it was a Leadership 6 rerollable. I missed, and yeah, my unit with the generals gone. They're off the table or run down, and his unit is like that. Okay, my 3rd turn. The Yetis go ahead and charge the War Machine. And here I wasn't sure what to do with the mercenaries. we measure that if I charge the War Machine with the Mercenaries, I've got a good chance of overrunning out of the arc of the Dread Knights, which is right behind the hand that you see in this picture. So I go ahead and do that. Okay, finally one King Eater makes it on, the other one misses, and he goes ahead and moves up to threaten the auxiliaries. The two crew of the Bolt Thrower managed to take off another mercenary. Okay, so what happens here is interesting. The mercenary veterans overrun, but not far enough, so the Dread Knights are able to charge them in the rear. But the Yetis score really low on their overrun roll, so manage to block the path of the Dread Knights. So I got very lucky on that one. Okay, so when my opponent charges with his Dread Knights, he has no choice but to charge the Yetis. Okay, the Dark Acolytes move up and support. I'm going to try to cast spells there, and next turn charge the mercenaries, hopefully. Okay, here the Tower Guard just pivot and stay in my deployment zone to claim an objective. Okay, my opponent gets another high roll for magic, and he decides to cast a buff, I believe. But I think what he should have done is try to cast Ice and Fire on the last surviving Bombardier model of his own unit, because that model is still scoring. So if he can just take off that whole unit, that would help him a lot. Here we go, at the end of combat, this is what it looks like. The Dread Knights and the Dark Acolytes facing the mercenary veterans who still need one turn to turn around. Okay, so here's what I do for my fourth turn. For movement, the Bruisers are gonna march actually, into the ruins. I don't think they take any wounds from the DTs. The same with the Bombardier there, the lone surviving one, and the unit of 4 Bombardiers on the left. Okay, so here you have a better view of the situation. The King Eater charges the crossbowman, stand and shoot, and he takes no wounds. Okay, my other King Eater rolls a 1 and misses, so he will not show up this turn. Okay, so the crossbowmen failed their fear check, and with the King Eater getting hatred, he just he breaks the unit, chases them, but does not run them down. Okay, my opponent's 5th turn. After the mercenaries turn around, he charges them with the Dread Knights and the Dark Acolytes. Yeah, he gets a bunch of buffs off on his units. He gets a 5-up ward save, and I think he gets extra weapon skill. Anyways, it's gonna be a massacre. Yeah, he straight up kills them. He doesn't even chase them down or anything. He just kills the mercenaries. Okay, my turn 5. Nothing special happens when it comes to movement. However, my last King Eater does come on with the roll of a 5, which is important because if he doesn't show up by the end of the game, well, he counts as being lost. So that was an important roll. Okay, so this is what it looks like at the end of the 5th turn, and we actually made a mistake. We thought it was the last 6th turn, but regardless, I don't think an extra turn would have changed anything because I have actually 3 units in his deployment zone, the Bombardiers, and the Bruisers, and he only has 1 unit, the Tower Guard, in my deployment zone. So I win the secondary objective for this one. So for victory points, the Dread Elves have a decisive advantage, getting a 14-6 on that score. But since I win the secondary objective, there's a +3 and -3. So the final score is 11-9 for Dread Elves. Okay, so for the post game, the Dread Elves, I would say, have very strong magic with the 4-up channel in their own phase, and magic defense with the spell scroll. Very effective shooting with bows on almost every unit in the list, and they also had a devastating charge in the center to destroy my wizard bunker, which cost me a lot of points during the game. Bad points, mismanagement of the scoring units. The Dread Legionnaires and Corsairs, getting them stuck in the center of the board too early led to them getting killed, and I'd say the Dread Elves lost the objective because of that mistake. Okay, good points for the Ogre Khans. I think I got the matchups that I wanted in the deployment, with the Merc Vets destroying the Spearmen and the Bombardiers eliminating the only chaff unit that the Dread Elves had, and the Yetis on the flank taking out the War Machines, and also overloading the flank with fear causers like the Skull of Quanget from the Bruiser unit, the Yetis, and the Keen Eaters. When those units are away from the leadership bubble, eventually they fail their fear check, and then it hurts. So especially for Elves. Bad points for Ogres. The center was too weak, and not enough defense for the Wizard bunker, leading to the loss of the general. I think a big mistake was overrunning with the Merc Vets to get into a better position. I should have pivoted them around to face the Tower Guard and Dread Knights in order to discourage a charge into the Wizard bunker because of the threat from a rear charge by the Mercenary Veterans. Okay, so for MVPs, for the Dread Elves, I'm going to give it to the Tower Guard for making a really long charge and needing a 10 on the dice before wiping out the General's unit, and then scoring. For the Ogre Cons, for me, I chose the Bruisers because they took out the Corsairs and then they fled from the Tower Guard, which led them to surviving the rest of the game and scoring the objective. So that's all they needed to do, just survive. They're core scoring units, so they did their job perfectly well. Okay, I hope you enjoyed my first battle report. If there's any way I can make these videos better, just drop your suggestions in the comments below. And yeah, I hope you like the video, and see you on the next one.